Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra Ingerman, and I welcome you to the Shamans Cave.
Hi, I'm Renee Baribeau, and it is a pleasure to be here with you.
And I just want to let everybody know, as a birthday present to Renee is celebrating her birthday. Everybody push that subscribe and that like button and give us a comment. YouTube actually reads how many comments we get. And if they see that we get a lot of comments, they go, people are listening. And we want to honor Renee. Thank you, Renee, for blessing our planet with your presence.
Thank you. Yeah, we record our shows in advance, but I couldn't think of a better way I would get to start out my birthday than sitting here and having a conversation with you this morning. So I feel honored and I feel blessed, and so if you feel that way that you get to sit here with Sandra and me, hit that subscribe button. We have a good subject for you today, and I love to let. I don't know if you ever noticed. I like to let Sandra explain the subjects because you know me. I can get off all in a tangent and go here and go there, but she gets us back to focus, and so we really work well together that way.
We do work well together. I'm a little OCD, if people haven't noticed.
Renee, get back.
That's right. Yeah. So we did a show on boundaries, on setting boundaries, and I'm actually a pretty good boundary setter. I go back and forth. I flow, turbulence, smooth waters. I'm good at boundaries, bad at boundaries, just like nature's always changing its phases. And I decided that I'm going to start listening to what my body wants instead of what my mind wants, because I have been challenged health wise and I'm trying to get better. And so it's time to listen to my body. And the fall is a time where people flock to Santa Fe, where I live. There are so many special events. People travel from all over the world. I won't tell you all the special events. There thousands of people descend on Santa Fe every summer and every fall. And so, of course, I get flooded. And I love it. I get flooded by friends coming through Santa Fe for these events who want to see me. And my body this year, because of some of the things that I'm dealing with, I felt like I needed solitude, not isolation. I'm really understanding the difference between isolation and solitude. Solitude is food. It's something that feeds us, and I was in a place of needing solitude in my healing process, and so I shared with people that I wasn't up for being social at this particular point in time. It's the same people who come every year. One of my friends understood it completely, and we did a Zoom, and that was wonderful. But I was just cut off. I was cut off by every other person. And I can't tell you how many people this was who texted me, "Are you free?" And I said, "No, I'm feeling like I need quiet time and to be alone. This isn't a social time for me." And I never heard anything back from any of those people. And so I started to reflect on my life and realized that every time I set a boundary, and if it was with a real like patriarchal or hierarchical organization, I was just cut out where my name was never ever mentioned again. There is a blowback when we set boundaries, and it's something we have to understand, and it's also something we have to be comfortable with, because people who don't respect your boundaries aren't your allies. They're not your allies.
Mm-hmm. Boundaries are an interesting thing, and I've always decided that it's important to look at why we're setting the boundary. Sometimes, like when I was younger, I would just set the boundary just to get my way. And that always blew up in my face, because then I would have to get for the self kind of an attitude about it. But then when I learned to really like what Sandra was talking about is setting boundaries, because I need to, I need to take care of myself. I found that the pushback is there's always pushback. And the greater the boundary, the greater the pushback. My friend Cindy once told me, she was a spiritual guide, that, Renee, you must be doing something really powerful, because look at how big the pushback is. So that the pushback is relative to the importance of the boundary that I'm setting. And then it's my work to maintain that boundary. It's my work to stay in that boundary, because if I'm taking care of myself, I need to really hold firm in that boundary and understand what that really looks like for me. And I had a relationship that changed many years ago, and the other person set a boundary where they didn't want to talk to me for a few months. And that was a hard boundary to accept. Mm. But through it, I watched the relationship grow, because I did honor that boundary with her. They're like, okay, well, you call me when you're ready. And it was painful. It was really painful waiting for that call. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, one day, the phone rang. And it was always like, well, this isn't the end of the relationship, but this was how the relationship had to change for her in order to move into another phase. And so, but what I did understand in that was that it wasn't doing against me. It was what she was doing to take care of herself. And I think that it was the biggest pivot in our 30-year relationship, was that giving that person the right to have that, I shouldn't need my permission to have that right, but respecting that boundary that the other person did, knowing that it had nothing to do with me. It affected me, but it had nothing to do with me. And I find that setting those kinds of boundaries are so crucial in our life in order for the biggest spiritual growth. So I applaud you for setting that boundary.
I applaud you too. That's great. It's amazing. Just when you were finishing that story, this big shadow came in through my window. It was like making the punctuation mark or something like that. Yeah, it really is important to set boundaries right now. And I remember when I used to teach a lot. Well, I'm still teaching a lot, but at workshops, some of my students would be so tired during, at my residential workshops. I teach from 9:30 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. And I give people a long break in between. And in that long break, they can take walks in nature, they can take a nap, or they can sit and practice the work that we were doing. They could work on each other. And what I found for 40 years, this is 40 years of teaching, is that most people, when they needed to take a nap during that long break, or they needed to take a walk in nature, they didn't, because they didn't want to miss anything. And we oftentimes don't set a boundary because we're afraid of what's going to happen when we say no. Mm-hmm. Are we going to miss something, something important that went on while we took that nap? Are we going to miss an opportunity because we said no? Mm-hmm. You can, for yourself all the things that you have not said no to because you're afraid that some kind of punishment is going to come back at you, because we haven't been taught how to set healthy boundaries that well in our culture.
Yes, I agree. At my fall retreat, we put in a sacred rest hour. And people seem to love that. And the other thing that I did was I set a boundary on my own time, because I've been burning the candle at both ends for the last couple of years, between working a full-time job, doing an apprenticeship program and building a house. And I was tired. And so I set a boundary that I wasn't doing all the teaching. and that I was going to have some of the more advanced students teach a section of whatever their work was, not my work, what their work was. Well, I went away from my retreat feeling refreshed instead of like feeling, oh my God, I just put out for 12 hours a day. So on Saturday night, the group made the ceremony, divided them into 3 groups. They made the most beautiful ceremony for the fire. I couldn't have thought of something as equally as fun or ceremonial as what they created. And I thought to myself, this is my new standard. This is my new boundary for retreats that I taught, for a good part of the day, but then I let it go that everyone was bringing something to the picnic, and that it was way more nourishing than if I had just, exhausted myself by wanting to do it all. And so I think that's one of the important things about boundary setting is that we have to learn to be able to ask for help and accept the help when it comes. Because if the boundary is, I can't do this all alone, like the last couple of weeks, I wanted to finish painting the downstairs myself. And I realized I have to set a boundary with myself. And so I asked my housekeeper, who's a painter, could you do this? And you know what? She did it all. So it's like when you set a boundary, even like, when sometimes when Sandra sets a boundary, I'm not working, Renee, right now. Okay. And then 2 minutes later, when I say, okay, then she like gives herself permission to do something. And I'm there like, okay, well, now she's decided to work again, but to give that permission to somebody else or to honor that somebody else is taking that space, I think makes all of the difference in the world. Instead of saying, no, Sandra, I need that right now from you. No, I don't. If I get it in a week, okay. And usually it doesn't take a week, but I think that creating that space around ourselves so that we can feel that we have spaciousness makes all the difference in the world right now when the world really feels like it's coming in, crashing in upon us.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that one of the struggles that people are having is almost afraid to take spaciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was saying at workshops, what am I going to miss? What am I going to miss on the news? What am I going to, I have to keep my ears wide open all the time, for what's going on. And one of the biggest problems that is happening for the people I know anyway, and I happen to hang out with now that I'm not teaching in person right now, my friends and my community are more my age. And so, we're looking at, staying healthy and what do we have to do? And it's just really interesting how I think people are afraid to say what they really need right now because they're worried about what they're missing if they step out and take care of themselves. And I'm seeing that a lot. And where that's leading people to is feeling emotionally overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
People are so emotionally overwhelmed right now. That's where all the anger, the hate, what's coming out, the crazy behavior that's happening with people are traumatized and they're really overwhelmed. And so we have to learn how to set boundaries. When you start yelling at somebody in a store for no reason whatsoever, that's a time to say, I am emotionally overwhelmed right now, and I need to set a boundary to bring myself back to center and stability during these chaotic times on the planet.
Yes, I had that with me. Like one of the things that I realized is that, I can't do an apprenticeship program every year because it really is a lot of space to hold. So for me to set that boundary for myself and that to set a boundary that I want to write my next book, there's this pressure out in the social media world or Facebook or, this global, like, connected world out there. And you see all of these coaches like, oh, don't disappear, don't do this, that, that you're going to become irrelevant if you like step back and take care of yourself for a minute. And so I've had to contend with that because I really want to step back. Even the I Am Symposium, I want to do this different this year. What I'm going to do is it's going to be like every day I'm going to do a prompt. And every day I'm going to invite people to go inward instead of outward on social media, to go inward with their altars, to go inward with their selves. And, that means it might mean that several thousand people aren't going to participate. Oh, well. But the people who are going to participate are going to go inward and they're going to go deeper with themselves. And I'm going to go deeper with myself. And I'm going to come to the next year not feeling like, oh my word, I just held all this space for thousands of people who weren't doing their inward work. Yeah. But maybe 10 will come, 100 will come through and say, wow, that was the most powerful inward experience that I've had in 20 years. And wouldn't that be important?
Yeah, when Renee and I were talking before we started to record, and I always say this, that we should just do our shows on the talks that we have before we record. Push that subscribe button if you haven't done that yet. And so in saying push that subscribe button, we haven't done that yet. I completely lost my train.
Well, we were talking before the show.
Oh yeah, about.
I don't know. We had an hour and a half conversation before this. We hit the record buttons today, and really, if you could be a fly on the wall for those conversations, you would not only learn about boundaries, you'd learn about a myriad of things that we think about during the week.
That's right. Yeah, and so Renee was talking about. She was talking about her birthday. And talking about all of a sudden starting to think about how does she want to live the rest of her life. And my husband asked me to do that with him a year or two ago. He said, what if we have 5 years left? What if we have 5 years left? What would we want to do in those 5 years? And I, before that, I was bringing through spirits that were called the Ancient Ones, and they were billions of years old. And I was posting on social media constantly, and it's amazing how many of my students have worked with the Ancient Ones, and they were asking me the same question, but from a different perspective. They were saying, we're here for less than a billionth of a second, less than a billionth of a second. What do you want to do in your life? That's how short it is. That is really how short it is. So at some point, we have to come to what does it mean to be irrelevant if we're leading the life that we want to be leading. If we set the boundaries, if we called in the people we want to call in, if we're teaching what we want to teach, if we have the friends that we want, what does it matter if we take time out and we followed our joy, we followed our heart, we followed what our body wanted. Yay, we're only here a billionth of a minute and we did it. Where if you were here for a billionth and a minute and you were irrelevant, it didn't matter anyway.
How irrelevant am I?
Yeah.
I think that's really important in this idea of like, lately, a lot of people have just left the planet. Mm-hmm. And, you just wonder what that last breath was. Did they spend time doing the things that they loved? Or did they spend time doing the things that they needed to do? And when you start to put those boundaries, I think that it becomes more meaningful. Why we got to this place where we needed to have these, like live this, these alternate realities on social media as a whole lifescape. I'm sure there's plenty of millions and billions of people out there who aren't on Facebook and they're out there living their lives the way that they want to, live that life. And I think that that's really important. So I think it's really an important question to ask ourselves how we want to spend the time, and that we deserve it enough to make those boundaries around it so that we can show up in service. Because when I'm screaming at the woman in the grocery store or something, I'm not of service.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was thinking about it today where I was on this, I was ordering something online and they switched the order. I was ordering a Cuisinart for my nephew, and the next thing I know, I bought knives. And
Oh, no.
no one wanted to know why. And it was like, it's like I was getting so frustrated. And then I'm there like, whatever, I'll just send him a gift certificate, you know? It's like,
Right.
but it doesn't matter. And
Right.
so much of what we put all of our importance on doesn't really matter. So I think it's really important to start to see what really does matter and set those boundaries so that you have the spaciousness around what really matters in your life so that you can show up present.
I think that was brilliant, Renee. And I think that we said, I think that you just really summarized it. And I think it's perfect. And in the times that we're living in, people are really going down. I mean, I'm talking to people who just can't keep up. We can't keep up with the pace when the world was different. And we've been being asked to slow down by everything that's happening. So so feel comfortable about setting boundaries and feel comfortable about living the life that you want to live, and stop worrying about what everybody else thinks about it. And so I think this is a good stopping place, don't you, Renee?
I do. And tell us how you set boundaries in your life that work for you on our Facebook page, the Shamans Cave, or on our YouTube channel. And we have some exciting announcements coming up about our YouTube channel. But for today, we're setting a boundary. This is our hard stop, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.